and welcome to another episode of BWN TV. This is where I pretend to be the founder who's very sensible and grown up, and it won't be like that at all. Goodness only knows what's going to happen in today's show, but it's really great fun because we're getting to meet lots of our members, lots of the insiders, and lots of the people that are affiliates. So we're really lucky today because we've got someone who's an affiliate, an insider, and attends our events, and has even done a speaking engagements at our events. Now, you're going to think I'm making this up. Please don't turn off. This really is this wonderful lady's name. Welcome, Robyn Banks.
Good morning. How are you doing, Mandy? You all right?
I'm good, thank you. So to clarify, that wasn't your maiden name, was it? You've married into...
No. No, this is my married name. Mum was furious because she said she spent ages looking at my Christian name to make sure that I couldn't do something really daft with it. But, you know, I go and marry a bank robber, so become a bank robber. She was mind you, she did always say that I would always be on the front of every police station in the country. So with a name like this...
When you met him and you found out his last name, because in first dates you don't find out last names, do you? You tell him like, what's your name? And my name's Robyn, you know. So when you found out what his last name was, did you kind of go, no, I'm really sorry, mate, this isn't going to work? Or did you go, yes, this is the one?
I'm fine. No, it never really occurred to me for quite a while, because we knew each other a long time before we actually got together. We were friends for a long time, so we knew what the surnames were. But yeah, it just kind of, it didn't really happen until we were getting married and Rick said, I want you to have my surname. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll be the last of the Craigs, I don't care. And Mum went, really? I went, yes. But then when we decided, and then when I started using it when I was going networking, it was cracking because it had such an impact, and it was a way of breaking the ice. Because what I do is so technical and seems as so being so scary because it involves the law, people get a bit sort of reticent about it and stand back a bit. Whereas once they find out what my name is, that gets me in, and then so I've broken down barriers already.
See, I see this a lot. I mean, I've heard Robyn speak at our events for quite a few years, and she's a brilliant speaker about what is basically a really heavy and, for most people, boring subject. But it's not boring with Robyn. But the funniest thing ever is there's usually a bank business development manager in the room. Quite often there's 2 or 3. And the minute Robyn stands up and goes, "Good morning, my name's Robyn Banks," you see the bank manager's like, okay. Don't know what she wants, but we're steering clear of that one. Anything that opens doors. Do you like networking?
No. I'm actually, surprisingly enough, I'm quite a shy person, and I find it quite difficult to walk into a room where I don't know anybody. When I get to know people, but even if I walk into like one of our events where I come along to your events and I know you and I know most of the people there, I still get nervous going in because I'm going to a room of people and you don't know how you're going to be received, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because
everybody's got stuff going on. Everybody has other stuff going on behind them, behind the business. As business women, we don't just have, this is me and this is my business persona and I've got 6 people behind me that you can connect with. Yeah. We also have, off to this side, we may have, well, I've got this issue going on, and this side we've got this issue going on, and we've got to try and make them all match up. And it's so you don't, and they all affect how you feel when you're doing something.
Yeah. I think the thing is I hear this a lot, and that's one of the reasons why at the BWN, even in our online events, we get there early. Because I used to be, I mean, people think I'm mega confident, and I will stand up on a stage and I'm speaking at engagement on Saturday, 1,800 business leaders from around the world. It's probably one of the biggest gigs I've ever done. And yeah, it makes me a bit nervous. obviously, but it doesn't bother me. It's no skin off my nose. But you go back to when I started my career 12 years ago, I have actually sat in the car and not walked into networking events. So what you're talking about there is something I really know firsthand. And the trick I would have is I would hold on to my phone a lot, because then if I felt if it was starting to get too much, you get that, I'm not actually breathing anymore, am I? I'm not actually breathing in this room of people, and you want me to look like a professional. I just go, oh no. And I just pretend to have a phone call, because it was so scary. And that's why at BWM, we actually have a policy that is a welcome and meet and greet policy. There is always someone at the door. And even in our online events, there is always someone at the door. So if I'm looking after the main group of people I can see on the screen, if anyone's struggling to get in or is a bit nervous, one of my team is speaking to them saying, don't worry, I know you've got 72 kids and a dog barking, just turn the mic off, it's fine, we don't mind. But it's interesting, and it's lovely to hear you be so honest about not liking networking. What makes you network then? If you don't like networking, what makes you go, okay, bite the bullet, let's do this?
Yeah, got to do it. All my work in the 15 years I've been running the business has come through networking or referral. I've never done any advertising at all.
So it works, basically.
Basically. When I started out, I spent, because I just left the Foreign Office, and because I left because...
Cool.
Huh?
I said, told you she was cool.
Yeah. When I left the Foreign Office, because I was being bullied, that really attacked my self-confidence. And the reason I didn't go back was because I medically couldn't walk back into that building, because of the systematic bullying I'd been on the end of for such a long time. And that then didn't help me walking into networking events. So what I did was, when I left there and I'd got it all sorted out, it took me about 18 months to get it all sorted out. And then I found that actually my first stepfather was an accountant, and he ran his own business. And I found actually even struggling to go into his office and deal with his clients, who I knew anyway, was difficult. So I kind of used that as my stepping stone to get me back into the swing of work. And then I thought, right, okay, so I'll spend 6 months before I set the business up formally and start, just working out if I've got a business, have I got something that people will want to buy? So we did that, and I did that by starting doing it as networking. And he said to me, that's your way forward. Go out and get yourself out there. This is the way that the things are moving forward now. I mean, at that time there was BNI and very little else, right? So I didn't go to BNI, I went somewhere else. So I just found one that was somewhere else, and I went along, and I thought, yeah, okay, yeah, I can do this, because I prepared before I go into anything, and I knew what I was going to say, and I knew how I was going to put it across, and I knew I wasn't going to come across as a solicitor, because I'm not a solicitor. I decided that was the way to go forward with it. So I spent a good 3 months networking before I even set the business up formally.
That's a really good point, actually, because one of the things I often hear from new business owners is, or people that are going through a change in their companies, they say, oh, I'm not going to network now, I'm going to wait till after the rebrand. And I say to them, no, you're doing it the wrong way. Do not rebrand until you've spoken to people that you want to be your customers. In fact, I see it with my coaching clients all the time. I get on the insiders, there's always someone saying, how do I know what to charge this at? What colours do you think work here? How shall I sort this out? And I say, right, are we your target audience? And it's normally about, for some people, it's only about 30 or 40% of us is their target audience. No, not really. Okay, do you have customers? Yes, I've got customers. then go and talk to them. Go and talk to people that buy from you. And that's the mistake people make. They think, I can't go networking until I've got a business card, until I've got a banner, until I've got a website. In actual fact, it's far better if you get out there and meet people and say, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is how I'm working. It'd be great if you want to sign up to my newsletter. You can set up a newsletter without a website. If people have enjoyed your 60 seconds, if they thought, oh, that's interesting, I think I ought to keep in touch with her, then they should automatically have that, yes please, I'd like to know more. So yeah, that's really interesting point. So we can't talk about this a lot because we would be here hours, and I have coaching to do, and I'm sure you have lots of stuff to do too. And we should actually talk about what Robyn does for a living, because she's got some quite concerning things that we've seen in COVID-19 times that have been happening, and we want to just look after your business. But before we get on to talk about looking after your business, and how our Mrs. Robyn Banks does that, tell us a little bit what you can, which isn't going to get us into trouble. I don't want this to be and shut down on the line, please. Can you tell us something about your career? Because I've known Robyn for quite a few years, and if you don't mind me saying, Robyn has said to me, I think I'm going to come onto your network, but I'm nervous. And I've said, that's all right, just call me, I'll be at the door, I'm the one with the clipboard, let's have a chat. So I've got to know Robyn rather well over the years, and she's been an amazing source of help to my own business. But before I get to that, come on, is there any nitty-gritty cool stuff you can actually share online, bearing in mind lots of people are going to see this?
Yeah, 19 years in the Foreign Office is quite an interesting experience. When I was 13, I was learning Russian at school. I was doing French and German, and decided that was never going to be good enough to be an interpreter or a translator. So the career choice for me was HM Diplomatic Service. And when I was 13, that's what I was going to do when I left school. And my first posting was going to be Moscow. And at that time, obviously, and at that time it was, you couldn't go to Moscow until you were 21 because of the security situation, because it was still the Cold War. Yeah. And so I then did that, and everybody kept telling me I wouldn't be able to do it, and all my teachers kept telling me I wouldn't be able to do it, and I wasn't clever enough, and they kept calling my mum up to the school saying, you've got to dissuade her, you've got to tell her she won't be able to do it. And mum said, no, I'll tell her that when she doesn't get in. So when I was 19, I joined the Foreign Office, and 21, I was 21 in the March, and in the June I was on my way to Moscow.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that the moral of that is, if you want something bad enough and you work hard enough towards that goal, it will happen. It will happen without any shadow of a doubt. And that's what I've instilled in my stepchildren all the way through as well. Because yes, that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I was going to do, and nothing was going to stop me.
So off the record, you've told me lots of scary stories. Is there any of the scary ones? Because bear in mind, you see, this is the thing about us business women. We never appreciate how brilliant we are. We never appreciate how brilliant we are. And that's one of the things I love about the BWN is we don't just grow that business, we grow that person and enable that person to go, come in, right, I'm awesome at this. So here we have somebody that is probably going to share something, maybe she shouldn't. And at 21, when at 13, she decides her career and achieves it, and yet is nervous to walk into a networking event. Before you tell us something scary, I would just say that in coaching, one of the things we do is I will look, a client will be upset and they'll tell me this is tough and I can't do this and it's not working, etc., etc., all the negative. And I'll say, well, forget about that. Forget about work for a minute. Tell me some time in your life where you've wanted something and nothing stopped you. If that was me, Robyn, I would go back and I would have a look at what tenacity, determination, what attributes, what skills, what emotions, what feelings, even what haircut you had. And I would look at every single aspect of that. If you were my coaching client, I'd look at every single aspect of that. It'd probably fill about 4 or 5 pages of a book this big, okay? a book this big. And then from that information, I would then say, right, how do we migrate all of that to now? Because in that, you will find a way to go, damn right, I'm awesome. Come away from me. So come on, tell me a scary story, just to reinforce how amazing Robyn is.
What sort of scary stories? What things I've come across in business, or
no, back in the olden days when you were in
back in the olden days,
the world, and you know, I'm not sure what I can say because I know about, you know,
the best one probably that was actually quite scary was I told you that I was on my way to Moscow and it was my first posting, and you go on your own. Okay, so there I was, just over 21, going off completely on my own, no family, nothing with me, sitting in the front row of the aeroplane because you got to go business class, British Airways, and so I'm quite nervous because I like networking. I'm going into a situation where I know nobody in a different country. I don't even know where I'm going to be living. I don't know what it's going to be like, nothing at all. And remember at that time that it was the Soviet Union and it was still closed. Yeah. So this was really quite a nervy thing to do. So there I am at 33,000 feet, and they come and say to me, would you like to come and see the cockpit? Because in those days you could. Yeah. So I said, yeah, please. Yeah, because when I was born, Mum worked at Southend Airport, so I've got a big thing about planes and airports and stuff. So I said, yes, please. So I go in there, and just as I get in there, I'm sitting there, and there's the pilot, co-pilot, and the navigator. And they say to me, oh, we're just coming into Russian airspace. And I said, fantastic. And the captain goes, I wonder if they're going to speak to us in English or Russian. And I went, okay. So he said, well, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's always in Russian. So I said, okay. So I said, do you speak Russian? And he said, no. So I said to the co-pilot, do you speak Russian? And he said, no. And the guy sitting next to me perks up and says, and I don't either. And I said, so what happens if they speak in Russian then? He says, well, we just guess it. And I'm thinking, that's brilliant. They're going to give you instructions that you need to be at 33, 31,000 feet, whatever it might be, because of other aircraft, etc., etc. And you're not going to understand a word of it. So he looked at me and he said, do you speak Russian? And I said, well, luckily for you, yes, I do. He went,
oh. But then you're responsible for that whole plane load of people to know that you're 7 years of Russian.
Yeah. Right. And as I'm sitting there in the cockpit, because you can just see out of the windows, yeah, 2 MiGs, one either side, come to escort us to Sheremetyevo Airport. So, yeah, that was an interesting experience.
So what we're going to talk about now, isn't that exciting or scary? But it is quite scary what I've been seeing and what some of my team have been reporting back to me. So don't turn off, because what Robyn does in her day job is something you probably don't even think about. You should. And you're probably going to find quite boring. You won't. And we're just going to touch on a couple of things that we've noticed. So Robyn specialises in data protection. Don't turn off. Keep watching. And the thing about data protection is what we've learned through Robyn over the last 3 years is that if you get this right, it's not just about looking after data. You can actually make your company grow. You can actually build really good bonds with every single customer you've ever had. One of the things I was just saying to you off air, I was speaking to somebody last week, and I said, how's business going? Because I tried to catch up with as many of our members and insiders as I possibly can. And I said to this person, how are you getting on? Yeah, no, pretty good. And I said, oh, this sounds really exciting, what you're doing. Yeah, we can't wait. And I said, well, it's a good thing you've got your ICO set up. And they went, my IC what? I went, your ICO registration? What's that? So come on, Robyn, briefly explain to us, what is ICO registration? And how the heck are we 2 years after all businesses and anyone storing data had to, by law, have this, finding people that don't even know what ICO is? Maybe that should be a whole blog article. ICO who? What is it?
What is it? ICO stands for the Information Commissioner's Office. And the Information Commissioner's Office is not only the supervisory authority in the UK for this stuff, i.e. the ones who tell us what we should be doing, they're also the ones who go out and find people. they're also the ones who wrote the legislation we have in place now, i.e. we have parts of the European GDPR, the regulation that came in 2 years ago. And that we've got bits of because the ICO wrote all 3,000 pages and then in true British fashion went, we'll only have that bit, and that bit, and you can use the rest of it yourselves. So we've only actually implemented about a third of it. But what actually happens is what it's done is it's just formalised everything that's actually been in place since 1998. And the ICO registration is now paying a fee, and the fee is a 3-tier system. So it depends on how many staff you have and what your status is. So if you're a charity or a not-for-profit, you will always fall into the lowest tier of registration. If you have 10 or less members of staff, and that includes if you are a sole trader, you are a member of staff of your business. So even if you're not a limited company, you are still a member of staff of your business. And that will be tier 1, and tier 1 is £40 or £35 if you pay by direct debit. Now, I'm doing a lot of work at the moment with Lions Clubs International in the UK, and each club needs to register with the ICO because we're not exempt. There are some very tight exemptions, so very few people actually meet the exemption. So every club, all 653 of them, need to register with the ICO. I'm doing a good turnaround at the moment. 10% have. Woohoo! So what we're looking at here is what you do is you sign up, and I keep getting, so what do I get for my 40 quid? Well, you don't get anything, but you are be complying with the law, because if you don't do it, the fine is starts at £400. So what you do is balance off the need to register against paying £40 a year or £35 a year, depending on how you're paying it, against, well, I could be fined £400 plus, you know.
The thing is, it applies to, I think the problem has been is a lot of companies say, well, most of my clients are through my website or through social media. That's still data. That's still information that you have access to. And the thing, the way I always look at it is something that obviously I learned from Robyn, is if something went wrong, nothing to do with your company, nothing to do with your website or how you do email or any of the platforms you use that are directly yours. If something went wrong with, say, Facebook or Eventbrite or with Zoom, could you prove that you had done everything in your power to protect your customers? And that's the point, isn't it? That's the point that people aren't appreciating. It's not just that ICO registration. You then need to put, this is the bit that you're really good at. You're able to look at a company and go, right, this is what your policies need to say. This is what you need to prove that you do with your data. And I think that's the bit that people get themselves all in a tiz about, so don't really bother.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with it is it shouldn't, and none of it should be in legal language. So, you know, I often get, well, my solicitor's done it for me. It'll be too long, too complicated, and in too much legal language. The whole point of this is it's supposed to be straightforward for Joe Public. So anybody should be able to understand, looking at your website, at your information, at your emails, that you've looked at the data that you're holding, and that you are aware that you're holding a vast amount of personal data that is caught by this law, and that you have then taken things forward in an appropriate way so that we, looking at you, know how your business is processing our data. And if we know how your data is being processed, that means that we can then understand and trust you to be looking after our data appropriately. So it's not about changing the way you do anything as a business. It's a way of bringing in the appropriately written notices. So that main one for your website, if you've got a website, but you have to have one even if you haven't got a website. And on your emails, a little disclaimer at the bottom underneath your signature. If you've got a really long one that's really technical, people get past the first 2 sentences and switch off. And that's not the point of this stuff. This stuff is supposed to make sure that people understand how you are processing their information and looking after their information in terms of keeping it secure, just by having the appropriate wording there. And that's what I do. I provide that appropriate wording because I make it fit your business. I make it fit into your business rather than sticking out like a big sore thumb. That's what it's not supposed to do. It's not supposed to slap people around the face as a big legal statement.
Oh,
it's supposed to because the minute you start getting legal, people switch off.
Yeah, pop-ups, cookies, and all that constant. And what do we know about pop-ups and cookies, Robyn?
The calorie-free.
The only
but they haven't got any chocolate chips in, so you know they're not my favourite. The cookies on websites, there are two different types of cookies. There are what's called essential cookies, and those cookies are things that make an online shop work, for example. Right? So if those cookies aren't there, that shop doesn't work. Okay, can't buy anything. So you need to. So if you're selling anything through your website, there will be cookies there, but we don't have to worry about those ones. The ones that we're looking at, and the ones that you have to acknowledge you've got, particularly, is the targeted advertising ones. Okay? So analytics means that if we acknowledge the analytical cookies, then we're just letting people know that it means that what we're doing is we're using the data that the system collects in order to improve our website, make it work, just understand what people are doing through our websites. Those cookies, usually Google ones, most people use Google ones, and that's fine. That's a perfectly legitimate use of that data, but we have the right to know that's how our data is being used, because an IP address is still personal information, because it links back to a computer at a certain time that people are using it. So even if you're using, so I'm doing this through my laptop is what I use for my business, but I'm on the family network. Yeah, so we know that if somebody else is using my laptop, so shouldn't be, but if they were using my laptop, we would know who it was because we'd have the timings through the analytics. Yeah, so you can tell how people are using your website from it, and that's perfectly legitimate, but we have to acknowledge that in the privacy notice. The other ones, the targeted advertising, are the problem ones. Those are the ones that if you go on a Facebook page, for example, next time you log in on your laptop, so you can go on Facebook on your phone and start looking at holidays, for example. Right? Then, hang on, I've got that around the wrong way. So if you go to Google and Google holidays, the next time you go on Facebook, it will bring you up adverts for those places that you've been looking at on Google. Yeah, that's targeted advertising. That's saying you're definitely interested in going to Tenerife, so I'm going to bring you up every holiday on Tenerife. That's the problem. Those are the ones that can get nasty. Those are the ones that people don't like. And you have the right to turn those ones off. If you have a website, particularly, so like for Lions, I've got a problem because they're using free websites. Obviously, they're charity, so they want to save money as wherever they can. Free websites, nothing in this life is free, right? Nothing in this life is free. And the free websites will always attract target advertising. And it's running in the background. And but you can switch those off through your browser. Yeah. So we just have to make sure that in the privacy notice, we've acknowledged that so that we can see that that's happening. And that's all part of data protection legislation, because there is one particular regulation, which is privacy in electronic communications. And that is all around use of emails, websites, cookies, etc., etc. So we have to make sure that that's in there too. Now, I am a complete technophobe, as Mandy knows. I cannot make tech work at the best of times. I have a Mr. Banks who can make it work for me. That's a good lad. So he helps me do cookie audits because he has done website training and he is really into how these things work. And that's fine. And that means that I can give him a bit of my business to do as well. So it all works out in the end. But that's what we have to do with cookies. That's your problem. So it's not a problem having them. It's recognizing what they do. Now, The other thing I keep coming up against is, well, we must have a cookie bar. No, there is no legal requirement to have a cookie bar. There is no legal requirement to have a cookie policy, separate cookie policy. There's actually no legal requirement for either of those two, unless if your system is using a lot of cookies and those cookies are particularly intrusive because they get set on people's computers, your visitors' computers, right? So when you go onto a website, the website will set cookies onto your computer that you're as the visitor to that website. Some of those cookies then it will then trawl through to see what cookies are on your things, so that if you've done one where you've set preferences using cookies, so every time you go on the website, it says, "Good morning, Robyn." Right? That's done by using a cookie. Yeah. Those cookies sit on your system, and otherwise it can't tell it's you. Now, that's fine. And if you know that that's what that cookie does, and you know that that's what's happening, then that's fine, because you know what the use is.
Yeah.
If there is a lot of advertising going on and it gets really irritating, then you need to have the cookie bar. You need to make sure people realise that you've got these cookies going on. It is not legal to have a cookie bar where you cannot enter the website without accepting the cookies. Yet Twitter, it really isn't. Who else do it? Somebody else does it as well. Yeah, Google do it as well, some sites as well. Yeah, it's not legal. That's forced consent, and forced consent is illegal because we have the right to say yes or no all the time. So even if we don't need to seek consent to do something, we still have the right to withdraw our consent anytime we want to. So that would be a case of like a newsletter, for example. So I can sign up to a newsletter, or I don't sign up to a newsletter. That's perfectly my choice. But I could sign up to a newsletter today that in 3 months' time, I actually don't want to receive anymore. I have the right to then turn around and say, no.
Oh, I hate it when they hide it. And you think, right, you're sending me an email every 3 days. I wanted to find out about what you did once a month, not every 3 days. I know thousands of businesses. I actually wouldn't get any work done if I actually looked at every email that comes through every 3 days from these companies. But they hide it. So you go through and it's like the smallest writing ever, right at the bottom. And you think, that's naughty. I will find out how to get rid of you.
Exactly. But and again, that actually isn't legal, because we should be able to, all this stuff has to be easily accessible. You have to be able to, yeah. So you can take it down and have it as small as you want to. That's not the problem. If it is not legible, i.e. I can't find it when I'm looking for it, yeah, that's not legal. Essex County Council's website, you have to do 12 clicks to find their privacy policy. That's not legal. That's not easily accessible. Yeah, I know.
So, I mean, the thing is that at the start, I got the impression that the authorities were being quite lenient, and it was about, look, guys, it was about awareness, raising awareness. You need to do this. Big and small companies, you need to do this. You need to do this. But I think that is shifting, and we're seeing fines now, and we're seeing people making mistakes and getting into trouble. And it's not just the little people that are little companies that are doing it. It's the big guys, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the big guys that we really hear about, because they're getting the bigger fines. And the fine is not based on what size your business is. The fine is based on how many people have been affected by what's happened. Right?
Ooh,
so, yeah. So, yeah, exactly. Like the fines for the fees regulation, so that they start off at £400 for the lowest tier, right? Then tier 2 is £60 to pay the fee, and that's 10 to 249 staff. Okay, but the fine for that is £600. Starts at £600. The big boys, so if you've got more than 249 staff, or you're a public authority, but not schools, so NHS trusts, public department, government departments, etc., they pay the bigger fee, and that top tier fee is £2,900 a year. but their fine starts at £4,000. So it's all relative to how many people you've got. In terms of the fines for breaches of the legislation, that depends on how many people are affected by the breach. So if it's 2 or 3 people are affected and you don't do enough about it when you find out about the breach, or you don't follow the system, then the fine would be quite reasonably low. But that's low compared to what they could charge, not necessarily low compared to the size of your business.
Right.
So, for example, there was a case where, so I can talk about these because these were on the ICO website, so they're in the public domain. There was a guy who worked for a council, and he worked in the buildings department, and he decided to go and work out on his own, and he took the contacts he'd made, he took with him. But when you work for a lot of companies, they tell you in your contract that you can't approach people that you've brought in for at least maybe a year now.
Yeah.
It used to be 6 months, it's usually a year now. So he didn't do that. He didn't wait a year. He went straight out the next day, set up his business and contacted these people. And the council complained to the Information Commissioner, and the Information Commissioner's office investigated. They fined the guy £1,700, and he had to find that within 7 days.
Ouch!
Now, especially at the moment, you know, with people not having the cash flow to make that kind of money, you'd still have to pay that.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of redundancies. And so there's going to be a lot of people that decide to set up their own business. And you might think, do you know what, it's 40 quid. I'll get away without doing this. But in actual fact, you really should invest. If I was setting up my own business, and it all looks pretty straightforward, and I've been working for somebody for 20 years, I've been made redundant. If I come to you and said, Robyn, I know I need various things, I've got my insurance sorted out, public liability and all that kind of thing, professional indemnity, how much is it going to cost me, roughly, ballpark figure, to make myself legal for this stuff?
Right, so for not the fine, not the fee, because I don't do the fee, you have to do that yourself.
Yeah.
Although I can guide you through it. But for actually getting all the policies and procedures in place that you need to have, so the appropriately written documentation, you're looking at round about £200.
So for the sake of 200 quid, that man really should have invested £200 and understood what he was doing, shouldn't he? It's really sad when you hear of things like that. And I think I'm really grateful for you sharing.
Yeah, but I mean, again, Mandy, the other way of looking at it is, when I said about paying the fee, you're looking at paying £40 or £35 compared to a £400 fine.
Yeah.
With what I do, you're actually saving the potential of £10,000 worth of fines.
And do you know what I like best? Because I'm a big picture person. I have big ideas, and then I have the right people around me, because I go, yeah, let's do this. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be so cool and brilliant. And then one of my team will go, man, what about so-and-so? I don't know. We're going to do this. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be brilliant. What I love best about Robyn is because I'm not interested in tiny people, which is quite ironic, because I can flip into perfectionist mode. It's something you have to work on. As a coach, you work on yourself all the time, and I know I can flip into perfectionist mode. So I'm getting better at that. But I love best about working with Adavista is that I'm not interested. All I want to know is, the irony is, for me, is I've never signed anyone up for my mailing list. I've never said come and join our Facebook page or anything. People get involved with us because we're good for business, and so you don't need to sell at people, because they just like, oh, that sounds good, can I get involved? And so I've never done any of these things. So I've always been mega respectful of people's data. And in my experience, I've been in business like 27 years. I'm not that old, really. And I can remember that when we first got included in the Environmental Protection Act, it basically summed up how I feel about a lot of these policies. And I remember turning around to this government official who'd come down to look through my company and everything. I said, so basically, I'm losing 3 days. Back then it was all in folders. I've got to store all of these folders, and I've got to pay you £2,000 every 6 months just to carry on doing what I'm already doing, but actually document that I'm doing what I'm doing. Yeah, he said, pretty much. And that's the thing, is it's as so frustrating as it is and annoying and taking up your time. If you work with someone like Adavista, I had, what, an hour and a half chat with you? I went, I'm not interested. I just want to be legal. I know I'm doing everything right. I have never been disrespectful with anyone's data in my entire life. I'm not going to start now. I've never agreed with sending tons of newsletters. I know that some marketers really say, you know, get in there, send them another one, send them another one, send them another one. Never had that. I'm too respectful of people. And all I did was go, Robyn, this is how I do it. This is where I put it. That's what I do. And you went, all right then, I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Is that it? Yeah, just leave me with me. Really? I think it took us an hour and a half to become legal.
Yeah. I mean, it takes me about 8 hours to do what I do for a company, for a business, to make sure that I've got it right. And I'll draft it one day, and then I'll type it on the next day, and then I'll look at it again 2 or 3 days later, so that I make sure I've got it right. Because there's no wording for any of this in the legislation, you see. You just have to take, it's conceptual law, so you have to take the concepts, take the bits that apply to that particular business. So overall, generally speaking, for BWN members, we're looking at the same kind of concepts applying to everybody, but they'll need to be tweaked to be put into place. Yeah. So although we need the same documents each, how those documents are phrased, worded, what goes in them will be individual to each of the businesses in the network.
And that's the issue, isn't it? Is that people think they can do it for themselves or just nick a template off of line. But unless you've had the many years experience in data that you've had, you are leaving yourself open to risk.
Yeah. And the other problem is you can't use templates.
Can't use templates. Thank you.
Templates are illegal because we have to now meet this legal requirement that was brought in 2 years ago as a legal requirement of what's called privacy by design and by default, which means that you have to look at your business as a complete standalone. So even the Lions clubs, I have to look at each one of the Lions clubs as an individual organisation because they're seen as being individual organisations. So that means writing a privacy notice for each of the 653 Lions clubs, plus each of the 8 districts, which is the next level up, plus for the multiple district, which covers the whole of the UK. And we're talking about Scotland, because Scotland doesn't have a separate legislation under data protection. Busy. But then that was reflected in the training I just did, because I also do training. So I'll do presentations, and I did my first one on Zoom. And the Lions Club said to me, will you go and do a presentation for us, Robyn? Build some slides. So I did. And other BWN members will know my famous ostriches. Well, what I did was I got my stepdaughter, who is an incredibly talented artist, to draw me some lions. So I've got a lion with his head in the sand. I've got one who's looking incredibly smug, and he really does look smug. And then a very happy lion, you see. So I've got my lions, and I built this presentation, and they said, we'll run a couple of sessions. So we'll run in the afternoon and one in the evening, because some people are still working, etc., etc. So, okay, that's fine. We expected 20 people maximum to sign up to each session. We ended up running 6 sessions, and we actually had 270 people attend.
Wow. So, I mean, that basically sums it up. People just aren't really aware of what they need to do with data. Yeah, it's quite a worry. So moving forward, how are things for you? I mean, obviously very busy looking after the country's lions, but what else is going on? Is business good? Is it a bit weird, stuck there with Mr. Banks?
Yeah, business a bit weird because he's not working. He's finally been furloughed. He wasn't for the first 2 months, and of course he's a coach driver, so nobody's going anywhere. So he's got no work anyway. So yeah, he's been at home since 16th of March. He hasn't worked, but he does other stuff as well. So he's been working on a website that he built, and he's running, and he's populating, and it does boat stuff. That's all I know. It does boat stuff. And obviously cake orders are a bit thin on the ground at the moment because nobody's having parties, but we have got a couple coming up, so that's quite good. In terms of Adavista, I lost a lot of business at the start. I had some business carried over, so I'd done the consultations before lockdown, so I was able to do the work during lockdown. I've had one come through, actually through BWN, that I'm working, and what we did was we agreed that because her income was uncertain because of the current crisis, we've done it so that she's paying me a smaller amount over 3 months.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, Robyn.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it's steady income for me as well as making it easier for her.
Yeah, no, it's something I've been doing. I've done that for a lot of people, because obviously a lot of people got a payout, and this is a good time to use that payout. I know people need it to live on, but if you can spare a little bit, now is a good time to invest in the coaching, get that website working, you know, get your data protection right, and do these things. And I've done exactly the same thing. People have said to me, no, I'll just pay you, and I've said, no, please don't. Pay me over the course of 6 months, then I know I've got the income, and more importantly, I know that you've got money in your bank account if something goes wrong, because you're supposed to have, aren't you, about 4.5 grand sat by just in case for the boiler to go wrong or something to go. Well, it doesn't really matter if anything goes wrong with your car, because it's not going anywhere, is it? But well, I'm shielded, so I've not left our house since March, so you know it's slightly different for me to it is the rest of the world. But you know, I can understand that that savings, that little pocket of money that people have put by, is either disappearing or is long gone. So that's brilliant that you've done that. So just to wrap up, don't forget that Robyn is an insider, so she does go in there, and someone will say, what do I do about so and so, and I go, I don't know, and I tag Robyn. Robyn comes in and goes, right, do this, do that, that'll be sorted, done. Easy. I mean, basically you're getting your own data protection officer in the insiders for £5 a month. But then if you do want to make sure your policies are right and not keep stressing about it, due care and diligence. One thing we have to do as business owners on everything, due care and diligence. Can you say you did the best you possibly could on any aspect of your company? And so as an insider, you will get a discount to work with Robyn as well, which is fantastic. So that's really amazing you do that. So go on, wrap up for us. What would you say to all our watchers today? What would you give them one piece of advice, be it on networking or data or life? Come on, give me some Robyn Banks wisdom.
Well, I guess it's everybody stay safe. That's the first thing. This thing isn't going away anytime soon. So now is the time to start looking at your business and working on your business, because at the moment you've got time to work on your business. And that's how you're going to grow it, by getting these things sorted out now. If you haven't considered it before, we can always have a chat. That's free of charge. Let's just see what we can do. And if you're not ready to go ahead right now, then that's fine too. But it's really thinking about, it is at the moment, is not just about getting business in, it's about how your business is perceived in the big wide world. Because the businesses that are perceived as being on track, strong in terms of their back office administration and having all the right things in place, they're the ones that are still going to be around after this thing.
Brilliant piece of advice. Great way of ending it. We all sounded very grown up and sensible today. It's because of the subject. You know, with our Russian co-pilot.
So funny.
Funny? Yeah, I'm not sure I want to fly to Russia. You have visions of a guy there going, get him to say it again, we'll put it through the Google translator. So we want us to fly at 7,000 sausage plus a giraffe. Yeah. That can't be right. Say it again.
Google Translator's famous, because if you put in, if you translate out of sight, out of mind into Russian, that's fine. That comes out right. When you translate the Russian back again, it comes out as invisible idiot.
Okay, everyone that goes and does that today, do tag us in a post, because we need to know if that's true. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time when we're talking to Sarah Travers about money. and how not to be frightened of it. And she's an amazing businesswoman. So thank you so much for joining us today, Robyn. She doesn't rob banks. Just to clarify for anyone that's watching, I don't want the Google algorithm getting me into trouble. And we're not spies, so there's another reason not to get me in trouble with the other kind of the FSB.